All right. Take 3 or 4. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Woodward. I'm just so excited to have this opportunity. Thank you so much for stopping by my particular session, my presentation. So I'm excited to get your feedback. All right. So the name of my study is entitled Abandoned, a study of the lived experiences of the impact of fatherless homes and its relevance to social emotional development, culturally relevant pedagogy, and student achievement. Let's get started. Come on now. All right, take a moment. Check out this picture and the next picture. What do you see? What's going on? What feelings do you see come about? What do you see happening? Well, the real question I want you to answer is what's missing? What don't you see in these pictures? Something that's quite similar in each of them, and so many, many more in zip codes and low income communities across this country. See, this problem, I think, is rooted within the home. There are 24 million children currently who are living in a fatherless home. That's 43% of America per the US Census data in 2011. And I know they just released the recent census data just yesterday, but my belief is this number has simply gotten worse. That's 1 in 3 children in America who are growing up without a father in the home. But outside of the home, I believe this problem also stretches in the classroom. Well, something to celebrate is that a new era began in September 2014 when for the first time kids of color constituted a majority of America's K through 12 public schools nationwide. That's amazing. All these different kids and all these different colors have gone from the minority to the majority. Yet, with 6 million American teachers, there's still a swath of deficiencies that are still present, even with today. Within these deficiencies, we can find certain buckets. I think the biggest bucket overall is the gender bucket. Did you know that 80% of teachers are of male representation? And even of this 6 million teacher bucket, 80% are white, a mere 9% are black, 7% are Hispanic, 2% are Asian, and less than 1% are other. So there's clearly quite some disalignment in terms of the ethnicities present. But more importantly, beyond the gender and the racial breakdown, there's but a mere 2% of African American men who make up educators in America, and a mere 1.67 of Hispanic men. So what do we do? How can we possibly mitigate? Because clearly we can't just smooth over the ethnicities present, and clearly we can't start again at our beginnings and have 20% white, 20% black. We can't do that. So we have to think about our targeted instruction and how we go about teaching and leading our children. And that's where culturally responsive teaching comes into play. Because you see, someone by the name of Latson Billings told us that it mitigates the challenges of overcoming cultural mismatches between the home and the school. A couple other theorists would name this as multicultural awareness. So why? I've told you about the problems in and outside of the home and in and outside of the classroom, but I want you to take a moment to really take in the purpose, the why I want to commit myself to this study. So I think some of the biggest things that stands out to me within these purpose statements is that this study chooses to focus on the fatherless's personal well-being, social emotional development, and the child's academic investments and abilities. Alongside that, what really stands out to me within the purpose of this study is unearthing the effectiveness of culturally relevant assessments. Oftentimes, students are simply passed by, simply given worksheets to get through or pass throughout the grade levels. And few and far in between, their identity, their experiences, their culture from home is taken into an account. And I think that negatively impacts their outcomes that are found within the classroom when those experiences are turned towards a blind eye. So when we think about some of the theorists and conceptual frameworks, just to name a few, The critical race theory, of course, dominates the umbrella as it seeks to illuminate the voices of individuals that historically have been silenced in educational research. Culturally relevant pedagogy is another one, knowing that assessments and information must be relevant to the makeup of our children, knowing that the minority is now representative of the majority. So, how is it that we can leave their experiences as simply a parent pickup? There are a couple of other conceptual frameworks that kind of clouded my mind when I think of the social identity theory, when I think of intersectionality, when I think of all of these different opportunities for clashing and for the intersection of what's common and what's not quite so common, whether it's within teachers or within fatherless homes. So, of course, some of the theorists that I really took a liking to throughout the development of the PowerPoint and, of course, the paper, it's people like Dr. Geneva Gay, Gloria Lodson Billings, and, of course, Dr. Tyrone Howard. But I don't think we can ever leave out the infamous Paulo Freire and sprinkling a little bit of that oppression that many of the students that we speak of are going through. So, what is driving this study? Like, why am I here? What is it that we want to unearth? So, I think the overarching social research question that I came up with is what social, emotional, and scholastic differences can be made evident between children and young adults who have an active father within their lives and those who do not. Alongside this overarching research question, there are two other sub questions that I want to answer as well that help paint the picture of the quantitative approach to this mixed method study. Do fatherless homes have an adverse effect on student achievement? And does culturally relevant pedagogy have a significant impact within classroom assessments? With these three questions in mind, I'm aware that I'm able to take on not only the qualitative approach to the impact of a fatherless home, but more so the quantitative approach as well through culturally relevant pedagogy. So, the proposed research design for my study is a mixed methods approach with a methods design of a parallel mixed methods design. Both strands of my study will occur concurrently. Two separate strands, two separate things that we're studying. The data sources. So I wanted to go towards a multi-level approach to collecting my data, which means that my qual data collection is more so based on a hierarchical context and the quant data at another. So what that means is for the qual part of what it is that I'm in search of in terms of these lived experiences, I'm looking for teachers, I'm looking for assistant principals, I'm looking for principals, I'm looking on people at different levels and different stages of children's lives. I'm looking for parents. I'm looking for a nonprofit and mentorship and support structures in place and figureheads who all engage with these students left and right, whether the fatherless or those who have fathers in their life. My priority of method approach is Big Quan and Big Qual. I want them to have an equal status, more so within my concurrent design. One doesn't necessarily supersede another. While I favor Qual, and there's just something about the raw testimony to what someone's going through. I know that numbers don't lie. And I know that numbers paint a picture that's totally different than what someone may feel in a moment from day to day, or what someone may pull out of the sky based on what it is that they remember or recount. The quality of integration, I want to use a quasi mixed methods approach where my quant and qual data are not integrated, they're separate. My theoretical perspective, as I mentioned before, culturally responsive teaching, and critical race theory. So I found this figure within the book that I thought was just super intriguing and quite aligned. I'm a big visual person, so I wanted to make sure I showed this. So within this parallel mixed method, big quant, big qual design, notice that the research is guided by one overarching question and it's broken down into several sub questions. As the study takes its course, my quant data and my qual data live life separately, whereas they go through very similar mind frames in terms of the data collection and the data analysis. They all lead to their own separate inferences. However, in the end, an integrated meta inference is developed, which is something that I look forward to unearthing. My methodology. For the qualitative approach, I wanted to go towards a purp sorry, I'm super tongue tied. A a purposive sampling, which means my individuals resulting in specific purposes in alignment to the research questions. For the qualitative approach, I for certain want people in charge. I want people who are interacting with these children on so many different levels, whether it's through a formal educator to pupil role or from a simple, after school program 3 to 5, and they only get that scholar for an hour or so throughout the day. Well, I guarantee you they'd be able to recount their mood for the day, how they're doing within classes, how they're balancing and managing their social emotional development. My target population for the qualitative approach, as I mentioned, are fatherless and fathered children. I want both sides of the fence, but more so, I want parents, teachers, father figures, and mentors. My participant goal, if I can get 5 to 10 students in total that represent both sides of the fence, those who come from a fatherless home and those who do not, along with 5 to 10 teachers who interact with these students on a daily day basis. Interviews will take place in a 30-minute recorded virtual session, and they'll be in-person meetings if allotted, masked CDC protocol, of course. Instruments, I need a recording device, signed waivers. Oh no, come back. Signed waivers for minors, and of course, signed waivers for adults. Um, and of course, a private setting. I did develop a hypothesis because it is my hypothesis that there will be a significant social, emotional, and identifiable academic investment differences between participants who are directly and or indirectly impacted by fatherless homes and those who are not. So I have a hunch that there is a big difference between those who are growing up with a father in their life and those who do not. And there will be changes. There will be things that separate the two from a qualitative standpoint, both from that of that child and from the stakeholder within the relationship. So from the quantitative side of things, I have a different idea in mind in terms of the collection of data and specifically what data I'm in search of. So first things first, my target population are third through eighth grade reading classrooms or elementary and middle school literacy programs. My participant goal, I am looking for two third through eighth grade classes of students. Just two. Data sourcing, I'm looking for captive convenience settling sampling, which means that the students are pretty much not going to have a choice. If I have the teacher, or of course the principal, or who is ever in charge of the governing body of students, then I know that they'd be able to force the students to get them to do it. So that is the data sourcing that I wanted to take advantage of. The hardest part, of course, is finding a classroom that will be open to going forward with the course of study. So the instruments and resources that I want to use. So these are my variables that I would place within my classes. One classroom of the two would be giving a culturally relevant piece of fiction literature with an aligned formal assessment. The other would have a Eurocentric curriculum aligned fiction text and formal assessment. The purpose of the study would be to identify what direction and exactly what piece of literature would more heavily impact students, thus resulting in a higher student achievement. My hypothesis is that there will be a significant increase in the scores of culturally relevant outcomes in comparison to assessments that focus without regard to student relevancy and experiences. Primarily speaking, it is my assumption that literature that is more representative of students' thoughts, ideas, experiences, cultural makeup will lead to a much deeper level of investment, thus a much higher test score in the end, as opposed to Eurocentric texts that doesn't really take into account any of the identity that our scholars champion. My null hypothesis is that there will not be a significant difference between the groups who focus on separate spectrums of literature. So, in layman's terms, there will be no difference. And there will be students who pass and students who fail, and it will be difficult to find a significant difference between the two. My data collection for my quant side of things, I want to collect the summative results of literature representative of culturally relevant pedagogy and aligned texts. And I want the summative results of literature representative of a Eurocentric pedagogy and aligned text. For the qualitative form of data collection, I'm looking for recorded interviews that are exploring the lived experiences of those impacted directly by fatherless homes. So that could either be fatherless children, children with active fathers in their lives, or stakeholders who interact with the two on an ongoing basis. The data analysis. So the approach that I want to take is a multi-level mixed data analysis, which means from a quant and qual techniques that I'll be using, there are different levels of aggregation to answer interrelated research questions. So the questions are different, but they all kind of circumvent alongside one another. But at the same time, there are different techniques that I'm looking to lead me to this inference into my conclusion. Some of my qualitative strategies I plan to use within the general population are contextualization, theming and comparative, and display and visual representation. Within quantitative strategies, I'm looking to determine success rates between control groups with different sets of culturally relevant and Eurocentric literature and assessments. And I'm looking to also compare and contrast scores placed within a ranking order. So in summary, it is my hope to accomplish with this study a more equitable distribution of resources, inclusive communities within classrooms, stronger support groups, equal opportunities for the advanced placement of people of color, in hopes that our children can see the possibilities present, and most importantly, empathy and understanding. These are the things that I hope to unearth throughout my study and use as a catalyst to create this sense of change, in hopes that more fathers will stick around, more Black men will go into education, and a deeper level of understanding will be taken into an account when culturally relevant literature and pedagogy is put into action. This is something that really stuck to me as I think about this hope to accomplish. Because for many Black men, prison is their college. And I understand that it begins with us in the home and also as an extension within the classroom to help mitigate what prison awaits. Thank you for the time. Here are my, my references. And I'm just so thankful to be privileged to be alongside you all in this fight. Take care.